Hello and welcome to week 7 for strategic decision making for managers. This week we're going to be moving away from the new theories that we've been looking at for the past couple of weeks and be looking at methods for testing theories and how this turns out to be somewhat of a challenging concept when we're dealing with something as complicated and kind of vague as what strategic management theory is defined as. But anyway, let's start with a little Dilbert first. And here we have Ted, who is practicing his joke telling. And he says, what do you get when you combine cognitive bias with inaccurate information? Pause. Our business strategy. And as we can see, his boss is standing right behind him. I guess I should keep my day job. And Dilbert says, good luck with that. So we have to test ideas out to see whether they are just sound good or they're good in reality as much as we can. And so this week we're going to be looking at a variety of different articles that address the issue of testing. Empirical testing means that you go out and you test data, but you can test in other ways. You can compare it to other literature. You can look for logical flaws. So there's a variety of ways that theories get tested and reviewed, as we've seen already in the readings that we've done. So we have, I think, 10 articles for this week from a variety of sources, and I think you'll find it, again, interesting, especially since we're fairly well steeped in strategic management literature at this point. We have a good foundation to work from, and so we'll see that these people are going out and testing the established theories of Porter or the established theories of Barney to sort of see, well, if you try to apply this, does it really work or not? Okay, so this is important, and it's important from a number of perspectives, and I'll be talking about it in relationship to the dissertation process, as I was talking about variables last week. And so testing, of course, is going to be important as you try to test your conclusions, your hypotheses in your dissertation. So the discussion for this week, of course, is about the week 7 readings, and the paper is going to look at the past 3 weeks worth of readings and the concepts and theories that we've been investigating and try to put some kind of wrapper around it and make sense. So there's going to be a variety of viewpoints, but as I've been saying, your job is really to decide what you want to use and how you're going to develop an argument to make a particular point. And in looking at the discussion posts, I can see that's starting to happen. You're starting to not project your own opinion, but coming to a point and making an argument for a particular case that you think is valid based upon the literature that you're using. Okay, so that's what you're going to be doing. The 5 chapters of the dissertation, I've gone over this before, and I'm going to be trying to kind of wrap this up in sort of a fashion that sort of says, well, this is how you're going to go about doing it, as a way of kind of explaining why we've done in this class what we've done. And of course we've been looking at a lot of literature, and we've talked about the streams of literature, and then I talked about the variables, and we've talked about the value of theory. Okay, so what I'll be talking about today is how these all work together. So this is the result that you're going to need to produce, but how do you get there? So putting it all together, we start out with a stream of literature, and this will, in almost all cases, come from your concentration area. So if you're going to be going into marketing concentration, your stream of literature will come from some marketing theory. If you're going into leadership, your stream of literature will come out of the leadership literature. If you're going into international business, it'll come out of international business, because that's what you should know more about. So in the same way that we're going in one class session into the literature of strategic management, in your concentration, you're going to be going into 6 classes of the literature in that particular area. And you're going to have to filter out all the things that you don't think are important to your stream of literature, and then find a strong body of work that relates to a specific area that you want to work in. Okay, so that's step 1. Establish your first stream of literature. But then you're going to need a second stream of literature, and I'll explain why in a couple of more clicks of my mouse. The second stream of literature is going to be an intersecting stream. So for example, if you're going into, say, leadership, you might consider strategic management as a secondary stream of literature and try to find a way that you might use strategic management theory to combine with leadership theory. And so you're going to be synthesizing two different streams of literature. They might be coming both from the same general field. They could be two streams of literature from different marketing theories. They could be two streams of literature from different leadership theories. But you're going to be working with two separate streams of literature based upon two separate theoretical bases. And you're going to synthesize those together to come up with what would be defined as the gap, where these two streams, by synthesizing them, create a new opportunity to view the literature and advance the literature about that particular topic. Okay? So the gap means the two streams are coming close together. You found a way to integrate them, and the bridge is your logical definition of how you can use the theories and frameworks from one literature in the second literature. The greatest example of this we've found in strategic management, where Michael Porter synthesized the business policy literature from the field of business with the industrial economics literature from the IO economics field, which he said in his interview, they weren't talking to each other, they weren't investigating each other's work, but when you step back and look at both of them, you could see they were both trying to get to the same place. And so his whole success was based upon this synthesis of two streams of literature, seeing the gap, and then building with his 5 forces framework and his generic strategies, building the bridge across this gap that created a whole new view of strategic management. Okay, at this point, you've got what you need to have a prospectus. Okay, so when you come to me and you say, I'm working on these two streams of literature, and I think I found a gap, and this is what it is, and if I say that looks pretty good, then you get a committee. But until you have your two streams of literature and your gap, you'll be wandering around trying to figure out exactly what the direction that your dissertation is going to take. So once you go beyond the gap, the next step is to try to move to your proposal, which is the first 3 chapters. And to do that, you've got to come up with your methodology you're going to be using, which normally you think, well, what sort of an analysis? But really it's what type of research questions and hypotheses you're going to be using to test this logic that you developed when you defined what the gap was. So you said the gap is this, and now you have to come up with, well, how am I going to show that that's actually true, that these two can be combined? Once you've got your research questions and hypotheses, then you will do your data design, how you're going to collect the data. Couldn't find a symbol that worked that way, so I had to draw that one. Then you're going to go out and collect the data, analyze it, report the findings, which is kind of the statistical review of what the numbers showed, and finally summarize the results and put together your conclusions. What did it all mean? Okay, so this is the process that you go through to end up with your 5-chapter dissertation. And there are different stages along the way that you get approval to move on to the next stage. So there's no point in trying to develop research questions if you don't have solid streams of literature and you don't have a definable gap. Okay, so maybe if I use a little example, this would, again, kind of drive the point home of what you need to be thinking about and why when you look at the literature in any of your particular classes, you should be saying, I wonder if there's a way I could use what I'm learning here, use the literature that I'm seeing in this particular field when it comes time to, look at my concentration when I'm in marketing or when I'm in international business. Can I use something from what I've learned about strategic management in international business? I would say yes. You probably could find lots of things. Okay, but that's what the challenge is. So I currently have somebody who's working in the leadership concentration and just completed their prospectus. So I'm going to use kind of an example of what they're thinking of doing. So their first literature stream is coming from a theory in leadership called trait-based leadership theory, okay, which essentially says that leaders have certain common traits that distinguish them from other people, and those traits allow them to be good leaders. And the second stream of literature is coming from organizational change theory, and both of these have a big body of literature behind them. They're separate. There has been some work kind of looking at them combined. Kurt Lewin addresses both leadership and organizational change in a lot of his literature. But anyway, they would be considered two separate bodies of literature, and from those the student would have to develop the stream. And the stream is not simply a collection of everything that's been written. The stream has to start from the what we call the seminal or foundational leadership, and then lead to the more specific thing that this particular research project is going to focus on. So it's not everything. It has to tie things together, and this is what I'm trying to show you how to do in your papers for the class. So if we take literature stream from trait-based leadership theory and the literature stream from organizational change theory, now we're going to synthesize those two together and show how these two approaches, if combined, end up with something that would be a useful gap. Okay? Can they be integrated? Can there be a way to use what we know about trait theory with organizational change theory? And a research question might be, are certain leadership traits more important to the success of organizational change? Okay? And that's what the student is going to be looking to investigate. So at this point, we have to decide, now we've got our research question, we've got to decide where we're going to collect data, what kind of data we need to be able to answer that type of a question, and the related hypotheses that go along with it. So we start now, develop a survey and use other observations, collect the data, and then present a statistical analysis that lets us know whether the hypotheses were accepted or rejected. And then finally, Chapter 5, we summarize the results and conclusions and determine whether what we set out to show can actually be shown, whether it was proven by the data. So we have the theory, we're proposing in our research questions and hypotheses that it makes sense to choose particular traits of leaders when you're considering organizational change, but does it turn out that that's really true or not? Okay, so that ties in very well with what we're doing in week 7, where we're looking at testing, because that's what you do once you've got your research questions. How do you test it? Now, you're based totally upon existing theory. You're not really coming up with anything new except this gap and bridge that you're building. So as long as you do that well, no one can question, well, this doesn't make any sense because you're off in left field. Nobody does this, because you say, no, trait-based leadership theory is well developed. Organizational change theory literature is well developed. Both have been around for years and years. So, no, I'm strong on the literature. It's just now a logical connection. Is there something from one literature that can be used in the other literature? And this is the model that we use. This is what you'll be doing. This is how you come up with your research topic for your dissertation. Okay, so the keys to success. As you're thinking about your week 7 paper, I would advise you to think about your thesis statement early, because it'll help you organize the literature to support that particular statement. So, as I've advised many of you, you want to start out by saying, well, this paper will show. That's what you're going to be showing in your paper. And then you develop your argument by saying this paper will show that by examining the following information, the following literature, and demonstrating that these sort of things happen, that will present your case to support your thesis statement. Most of you are doing this now, but I want you to separate out sections with the headings. Those would be the various points that you're going to make to support your argument. Remember to write your transitions, so I don't have to try to figure out how this idea connects to the other ideas. And then remember that the conclusion isn't just something that you write after the fact. your conclusion is actually going to be a strong statement of what your paper showed. Okay, so the thesis statement says this is what I'm going to do. The conclusion says, look it, I did it. Okay, so those are the keys to success. And now we need to know how to enjoy your writing assignments. This is from Calvin and Hobbes. And Calvin says, I used to hate writing assignments, but now I enjoy them. I realized that the purpose of writing is to inflate weak ideas, obscure poor reasoning, and inhibit clarity. With a little practice, writing can be an intimidating and impenetrable fog. Want to see my book report? Hobbes starts reading The Dynamics of Interbeing and Monological Imperatives in Dick and Jane, a study of psychic transrelational gender modes. Calvin says, academia, here I come. You can see a professor in the making. Well, until next time, let me know if you have any questions related to the assignment for this week or the topic that I addressed in the lecture. And if not, I'll see you next week. Goodbye and good luck.